The anime begins by showing an ordinary boy named Kazuya Kagami sleeping in the classroom. He dreamed of a blue-haired girl walking away from him in his sleep. But then, he jumped up from sleep because he was trying to keep the blue-haired girl from leaving in the dream. However, he accidentally holds the breast of a girl who is none other than Chisato Chikaishi, the girl with glasses who is his childhood friend and the class president in his class. Due to being mistreated by Kazuya, even if it wasn't intentional, Chisato was instantly angry and embarrassed and scolded him for hours. After that, Kazuya went to the school's roof to cool off, taking out an obi or kimono belt that his mother had left him. He then kissed the obi, even always carrying it with him wherever he went because the obi was the only treasure left by his late mother. When Kazuya was about to leave, he accidentally found a pile of wigs on the floor. At first, he didn't really care about the thing and intended to just let it go. But suddenly, the wig turned out to be able to move and lengthen, then wrapped around his legs until he fell. Kazuya immediately realized it wasn't an ordinary wig but a demon trying to harm him. He then screamed, and miraculously, he could free himself from the shackles of the demon hair and tried to escape. But the demon moved closer to Kazuya, then nudged his chin until he bounced and fell from the school roof. At that moment, he thought that he would die. However, when his body almost hit the ground, the obi in his bag suddenly moved out, protecting his body and making him land safely. From within the obi cloth, the figure of a beautiful blue-haired girl named Kiriha appeared. Kiriha is tsukumogami, the name of the demon residing in an object. She has been residing in Kazuya's late mother's obi all this time. Kiriha greeted Kazuya as if she had known him for a long time, but he didn't recognize her. Because Kazuya doesn't recognize her, Kiriha gets angry and immediately knocks him out. Shortly afterward, a girl approached the two of them, where it turned out that she was the host of the wig that attacked Kazuya on the school roof. The girl immediately attacked Kazuya, but Kiriha rushed to save him by pulling his body away from her. Kiriha then offered Kazuya a deal, in which she promised to protect him at any cost, as long as he was willing to be her servant. Without thinking, Kazuya agreed to that, so Kiriha protected him and got into a fierce battle against the demon's host. Surprisingly, Kiriha turns out to be quite tough, so she can overthrow the girl several times. However, due to obtaining the power of the wig demon, the girl became difficult to beat, so Kiriha mustered all her strength and fought earnestly. The girl then resisted fiercely and managed to injure Kazuya's arm. Seeing the injured Kazuya, Kiriha suddenly became angry and used one of her ultimate techniques to make it difficult for the girl to move so that she could kill the demon controlling her body. After Kiriha managed to defeat the wig demon, the girl who was the host of the demon collapsed and lost consciousness. Kiriha then explained to Kazuya that the demon controlling the girl was called Amasogi, a demon created by someone's strong will. Furthermore, she assumed that the girl had a strong desire to gain Kazuya's love, which only made him blush because he felt a little happy when he found out that there was a girl who secretly liked him. But then, Kiriha told him that the girl was a boy, shocking Kazuya. That evening, Kazuya finally arrived home and was greeted by his older sister, Kasumi. Because she annoyed him, he decided to go straight to bed after the stressful incident he had experienced at school. But then, Kazuya woke up from having another bad dream and had the same dream when he fell asleep at school this afternoon. When he was about to go back to sleep, he suddenly felt something beside him, whereas previously, he was very sure there was nothing. Kazuya then pulled the blanket aside and found Kiriha sleeping beside him. Seeing a girl on his bed, he immediately screamed, which made Kasumi run to his room. Knowing that his sister was heading to his room, Kazuya quickly hid Kiriha so that Kasumi wouldn't find out if he had brought a girl into his room. However, after Kasumi left his bedroom, Kazuya was scolded severely by Kiriha for treating her impolitely. In fact, she is his master after he promised to become her servant when she offered a deal to protect him. Kazuya, still confused about Kiriha's identity, finally finds out that Kiriha is Tsukumogami, or the demon who resides in his late mother's obi. Having already woken up from her sleep, Kiriha ordered Kazuya to buy her some snacks. Kazuya, now Kiriha's servant, finally has no choice but to comply with the female demon's request, even though she is annoying by telling him to go back and forth to the convenience store to buy her favorite sweets. When Kazuya was enjoying dinner with Kasumi, suddenly, they heard a woman's laughter from upstairs, which was none other than Kazuya's room. Kasumi then suspected her brother, but Kazuya convinced his sister that the voice came from the television, even though he knew exactly that it was Kiriha's voice. After dinner, Kazuya returned to his room but did not find Kiriha. He then decided to take a shower, and it turned out that Kiriha was also in the bathroom. At first, Kazuya thought that he would definitely be scolded and beaten by her. But unexpectedly, she actually invited him to take a bath together. Besides that, after taking a bath together, Kazuya and Kiriha ended up sleeping next to each other on the same bed because she refused the mattress he gave her and chose to sleep next to him. The next day, Kiriha woke up first, then tried to wake Kazuya up in a pretty rude way. Looking at the clock showing 8 o'clock in the morning, Kazuya jumped up in surprise and rushed to the school, even though, in fact, he was already very late, so he was furiously scolded by Chisato. Actually, the reason Kazuya was late for school was ridiculous, and it was all due to Kiriha destroying the alarm in his room because it was too noisy. In addition, Kazuya is also involved in a heated argument with Kiriha, who forces him to attend school. Not wanting to get into trouble at school, Kazuya then asked Kiriha to change into an obi so she could come to school. But apparently, he said that to trick her because, after that, Kazuya put the obi into a wooden box and left it at home. Afterward, Kazuya, who was talking about nasty things with his classmates during recess, was surprised by Chisato's appearance, who immediately punished them. Chisato then advised Kazuya and the others to use their time by doing useful things and reminded them of the homework that had to be collected after lunch. Hearing Chisato's words, Kazuya remembered that he had not done his homework and then asked his friend, Osamu, to lend his homework so he could cheat. Chisato, who heard this, dragged Kazuya to the library and forced him to do his homework because there was still enough time before lunchtime was over. When Kazuya was focusing on doing his homework, Chisato, sitting in front of him, chuckled because she remembered her childhood and often came to Kazuya's house to study together. Even she often helps him with his homework. Remembering these memories, Chisato shyly offered to Kazuya to come to his house, where they would study together like before. Hearing that, Kazuya felt happy and was about to accept her offer. However, he remembered Kiriha, who was now living at his house, so he was forced to refuse Chisato's offer to study together. Even though Chisato accepted the refusal and acted as if she didn't mind it, it was clear that she felt sad that Kazuya had rejected her offer because it turned out that she had secretly liked him, even since they were little. After finishing his homework, Kazuya put the book he borrowed back on the shelf while Chisato headed for the door. However, she seemed to have a hard time opening the library door, as if someone had locked it from the outside. At the same time, Kiriha appeared before Kazuya and punched him. Chisato then told Kazuya that the library door was locked, as were the windows. He tried everything possible to break down the door or the window pane, but his efforts didn't work. Realizing something was wrong, Kiriha disguised herself as a school student and introduced herself to Chisato as Kazuya's cousin. Kazuya then told Chisato that Kiriha really liked all things related to the supernatural world, so he felt sure that she would be able to find a solution to the problem they were currently facing. Kiriha, who had known that all of this was the work of a demon, then told Kazuya and Chisato about Amasogi, who often causes trouble in the human world, because it really comes from the strong desire of a human. Kiriha then took out a keychain that was said to be an amulet that could track the whereabouts of Amasogi, who might be nearby. However, the amulet reacted to all the books in the library, leaving her confused. Not wanting to waste any more time, Kiriha used her power and tried to destroy the door. Chisato, who saw Kiriha's power, felt very surprised and wondered how she could have such great power. However, Kazuya, Chisato, and Kiriha were thrown into a dimension filled with bookshelves instead of successfully opening the library door. While the three were guessing what had happened, suddenly, several books flew off the shelves and shot straight towards them at high speed. However, Kiriha was no less fast and could fend off the attack with her shawl. In fact, her shawl not only had a formidable resistance against any attack but could be used as a shield and a weapon, making it very flexible when used in combat. Realizing that Kiriha could easily ward off the first attack, all the books on the shelf fused together, turned into a giant book monster, and immediately attacked her. Having turned into a giant, Kiriha had difficulty defeating the book monster. When Kiriha got into a fierce battle with the monster, suddenly, a book was about to attack Chisato. However, the book monster protects Chisato instead, which makes Kiriha realize that she is the cause of all this. Kiriha then told Kazuya that Chisato was the one who caused the creation of the demon Amasogi this time and told him to recall Chisato's wish that he didn't fulfill. Hearing this, Kazuya remembered Chisato's previous offer, which invited him to study together at his house. Because of that, he then decided to fulfill her wish. Kazuya then held Chisato's shoulders and invited her to study together at his house like they were elementary school students. She immediately accepted his invitation, and slowly, they finally got out of the world, and the library returned to normal. A few days later, Chisato visited Kazuya's house on Sunday according to the promise they had agreed on. However, Kazuya didn't come out of his room, even though Chisato had knocked on his door many times. She then decided to go straight to his room and was very surprised to see Kazuya sleeping with Kiriha on the same bed. Chisato scolded Kazuya for being disrespectful to a girl. However, he was confused because he woke up late, even though he had set the alarm. Kazuya then felt annoyed that Kiriha had broken his alarm clock again. Chisato then apologized to Kiriha and Kazuya for troubling them in the library. However, Kiriha explained that the incident wasn't entirely her fault. Kiriha then told Chisato and Kazuya that the incident usually happened because of a malison that caused the demon Amasogi to appear on objects that have an emotional attachment to a human and grow bigger as they will grow stronger, then overpowering the person if their wish was not fulfilled. Furthermore, Kiriha explained that supernatural occurrences often occur in an area and have the potential to be a threat to humans. This is because the goddess Kokuyura who inhabits the area is incompetent in carrying out her duties, thus allowing the demons to appear and act as they please. Meanwhile, one of Kazuya's classmates, a boy named Shiro, accidentally meets a voluptuous woman who asks where Kazuya is. Hearing this, Shiro said that Kazuya was his classmate, and he was willing to take her to Kazuya's house as long as she met the requirements proposed by Shiro. The next day at school, Shiro, annoyed with Kazuya, then kicked him and scolded him, saying that Kazuya was the cause of all his problems. Shiro said he met a voluptuous woman named Kokuyo who asked where Kazuya was yesterday. Because Shiro was fascinated by her physical appearance, he then tried to approach Kokuyo by saying that he was willing to take her to Kazuya's house as long as she was willing to have lunch with him at a restaurant. Shiro thought Kokuyo would be impressed by him and like him after he treated her. But unexpectedly, she took advantage of the offer by ordering all the food on the menu and finished it alone. In fact, because Kokuyo could finish all the food alone, she got a cake gift from the restaurant. Because Shiro doesn't have enough money to pay the bill for all the food ordered by Kokuyo, he is forced to borrow money from Osamu for 500,000 yen. In addition, he must help Osamu with his work during summer vacation without getting a penny to pay off his debt. Meanwhile, at a temple, Kokuyo, the raven spirit, turns out to be Kokuyura's familiar. Kokuyo had to face Kokuyura's wrath for neglecting her task to find Kazuya. She immediately apologized to the goddess and explained that she had a big appetite and couldn't resist the temptation to eat, especially if the food was served in front of her. Moreover, she can eat it without having to spend a dime. Kokuyo revealed that so far, she only ate grass, even if she eats meat. It's only frog and mouse meat that roam around the shrine. She was forced to eat all of it because the temple of the goddess Kokuyura was an abandoned temple, and there was no one to pray or toss coins there. Meanwhile, when it was lunchtime at school, Kazuya's classmates looked so shocked when they found out that the lunch they had brought had disappeared somewhere. But then, Kazuya and his classmates were surprised by the appearance of Kokuyo, who came to see Kazuya while eating the students' lunch without feeling guilty. Shiro, who saw Kokuyo's arrival, approached her and urged her to return the money he had spent to pay the restaurant bill. Hearing this, she apologized and said she didn't have money. When she finally met Kazuya, Kokuyo invited him to go with her to the temple of the goddess Kokuyura. But then, Kiriha appeared before them, trying to prevent Kokuyo from taking Kazuya away. Seeing this, Kokuyo ordered Kiriha to get out of her way while mocking her. Getting ridiculed like that, Kiriha felt offended and could not contain her anger, so she then challenged Kokuyo to fight with her. However, their fight will not involve supernatural powers because they are at school and witnessed by the students. Therefore, Kiriha and Kokuyo will have an arm wrestling fight. If Kiriha wins, she will accompany Kazuya to the Kokuyura shrine. The two started arm wrestling, which was different from usual. In the end, Kiriha beat Kokuyo and easily won the arm wrestling. After that, Kazuya went to the temple of the goddess Kokuyura on a hill, accompanied by Kokuyo, Kiriha, and Chisato. On the way to the shrine, Chisato said that she had no idea there was a shrine on top of the hill. Kokuyo then explained that the Kokuyura goddess temple was unknown to the residents around the area. Because of this, no one comes to the temple to pray or toss coins to invoke good luck. Arriving at the temple, the goddess Kokuyura appeared, wearing a mask. Without further ado, Kokuyura asked Kazuya to become a malison cleaner in the city. Hearing this, Kiriha immediately rejected Kokuyura's request, even though the goddess openly said that Kazuya was the cause of the increasing number of malisons in the city, so he was naturally responsible for solving the problem, especially because the emergence of malison has the potential to endanger the safety of mankind. Kiriha, who acted as if she was hiding something from Kazuya, told him that Kokuyura was telling a lie and invited him to go home. However, when Kazuya and Kiriha were about to go further to leave the shrine, they were blocked by the magical barrier that could prevent anyone who intended to leave the shrine. On the other hand, knowing that there will be a fight soon, Kokuyo then takes Chisato away from that place by flying using her wings. Kokuyura, the water goddess, then attacks Kiriha using her water techniques. Kiriha blocked the attack with her magic shawl. However, Kiriha soon became desperate, so she decided to carry Kazuya by flying upwards while dodging Kokuyura's attack from below. But as it turned out, Kokuyura's magical barrier covered the airspace of the shrine, causing Kiriha to crash into the translucent barrier. Kiriha decided to counterattack, trying to destroy Kokuyura's mask. However, her attack could not penetrate Kokuyura's defense until finally, Kokuyura turned things around by attacking Kiriha repeatedly and overthrowing her. It didn't stop there. Kokuyura then cast a spell to issue her ultimate technique. Not long after, the sky suddenly turned dark, and then a giant ball of water appeared that fell right into Kiriha and Kazuya. However, the two managed to survive because of Kiriha's multi-layered defensive move. Although in the process, the defensive technique completely drained Kiriha's strength until her body shrunk and turned into that of a child. Seeing that Kiriha was still holding on, Kokuyoura took out her ultimate technique again, but Kiriha could hold it in again. However, Kiriha lost consciousness due to the loss of strength, causing the two to be dragged into the stream of water. At that moment, Kazuya woke up in a dream world and met a mysterious woman with black hair. The woman told him that he had to become stronger to protect Kiriha and break the bonds that had bound the female demon all this time. Kazuya and Kiriha finally regained their senses, and he then asked her to return to being an obi, but she refused the request. However, Kazuya finally made Kiriha become an obi after calling the female demon by her real name, Ayasakura. Even though Kiriha has become an obi, Kazuya can use her power against Kokuyoura. On the other hand, Kokuyoura did not stay silent and attacked Kazuya, who managed to make a shield from the shawl, but was not strong enough to protect himself because this was the first time he used Kiriha's power. Kokuyoura then attacked Kazuya again, but this time he was able to create a shield that was much more formidable than before and managed to fend off the attack. Kokuyoura, who felt annoyed, then used one of her ultimate techniques to attack him again. However, Kazuya swiftly turned Kiriha's shawl into a weapon that matched the goddess's technique. Feeling confident in his strength, Kazuya launched an attack and managed to destroy Kokuyoura's ice barrier. But later, Kokuyoura caught Kiriha instead and threatened to kill her if Kazuya refused to become a Malison cleaner, according to her orders. Because he wanted to save Kiriha, Kazuya agreed to Kokuyoura's request and was willing to become a Malison cleaner. After the fight, Kokuyoura's mask suddenly fell to the ground, so her true form was finally revealed. Kokuyoura turned out to have the form of a little girl, so Kiriha laughed out loud after finding out. Kokuyoura then revealed that her aim was to attack Kazuya and Kiriha solely so that Kazuya could use and control Kiriha's powers. On the other hand, Kokuyoura also wanted to make it clear to Kiriha that she and Kazuya would become stronger if they fought together, rather than Kiriha just constantly protecting him. In addition, Kokuyoura also wanted to test Kazuya's strength and determination. After that, Kazuya walked back to his house while carrying Kiriha, now a little girl. Kiriha then remembered her past, where at that time, Kazuya, still a baby, was being carried by his mother, Kazuya Kagami, who asked her to always protect him. Turning to the present, because Kiriha has turned into a little girl, Kazuya tries to find clothes that fit her. He then asked his older sister and Chisato for help, but they didn't have clothes that fit Kiriha, so Kazuya asked Osamu for help, which only gave him a headache. The next day after school, Kiriha invited Kazuya to train his strength as a Malison cleaner. However, he refused the female demon's request, thus making her angry and was about to punch him. In the end, Kazuya began to train his physical strength because he had no fighter experience. He also practiced controlling his late mother's obi, but the obi became utterly uncontrollable, completely different from when he fought Kokuyoura, where he could easily control the obi. After finishing training that day, Kazuya and Kiriha then returned home. She explained that her body could also be seriously injured when she took human form like a normal human. However, when she takes the form of an obi cloth, she can regenerate as much as she wants. Kazuya and Kiriha returned to training, although he could not show significant progress in the end. On the other hand, Kokuyoura and Kokuyo, who are now living in the playground after the Kokuyoura shrine was destroyed in a storm, observe Kazuya and Kiriha, who are practicing. Kokuyoura assumes that Kazuya is a weak person and that the strength he has shown before is just a coincidence. Because of this, she felt that assigning him as a Malison cleaner was too rash a decision. The next day, after school, Kazuya is suddenly called by the student council president, Tadotaka, who is none other than a student controlled by the wig demon. Tadotaka then asks Kazuya for help because, according to rumors, a demon is seen in the social science club room. Tadotaka took Kazuya and Kiriha to the room, where they met Osamu, who was also about to go there. Arriving at the room in question, an oddity occurred because the room seemed to have disappeared. Kiriha then took out her talisman to check for the presence of the stealth and found it reacted. When they were about to return to the student council room, the corridor they had just passed suddenly turned into a dead end. They immediately realized that the demon had carried out its action to spread terror throughout the school. However, the demons will not simply launch attacks without the help of the humans who are their hosts and control them. Not long after, a student named Nakajima appeared in front of them carrying a sketchbook. Nakajima stated that he wanted to create a new club, but Tadotaka didn't agree because he didn't meet the requirements. Nakajima then drew something in his drawing book, and suddenly a monster appeared that immediately chased them. Kazuya assumes that Nakajima seems to have been controlled by the demon Amasogi residing in his sketchbook and concludes that the monster is just an image that can be erased. Kazuya then tried to wipe out the monster with the fire extinguisher, and his efforts paid off. After that, Kazuya tried to remove the wall in the corridor, causing a dead end, but the fire extinguisher he was carrying could no longer be used because the foam had run out. At the same time, Nakajima again completed his monster because part of the monster's body had been removed by Kazuya, then immediately confronted Kazuya and his companions who were trying to escape. In a state of urgency, Kazuya found a fire extinguisher near the monster. He acted quickly to grab the fire extinguisher with Kiriha's shawl. After successfully getting it, Kazuya sprayed foam from the fire extinguisher and completely wiped out the monster, while Kiriha managed to incapacitate Nakajima. Kiriha then told Nakajima to tear up his sketchbook possessed by the demon Amasogi, and he was forced to obey. However, he still has a sheet of paper with a picture of a monster from his sketchbook and manages to bring the monster back to life. On the other hand, Osamu, who had anticipated this, took Nakajima's sketchbook and exchanged it for his own, so the book that Nakajima tore up was actually Osamu's. After that, Osamu showed his great ability in drawing, where he drew a monster to fight the monster made by Nakajima and managed to defeat it. Osamu then reveals that Nakajima is not good at drawing and can only trace. The scene then switches and shows a young man who dares to confess his love for Chisato on the school roof. However, she politely rejected his declaration of love and said she already had someone she had liked for a long time. On the other hand, Kazuya and Kiriha seem to be watching Chisato from a distance, and he looks surprised to find out that Chisato already had someone she liked. When Chisato visited Kazuya's house to study together, Kazuya then asked about the person she liked. Hearing the question, she suddenly felt nervous and embarrassed until her face turned red because the person she liked was none other than Kazuya. On the next day, Kazuya is surprised by the students at his school who are dating and professing love to each other, even though that day is not Valentine's Day. When he was about to head to his class, Kazuya accidentally bumped into a girl, but she slapped him instead. Kazuya, who tried to apologize, then felt surprised by the appearance of a virtual board between him and the girl. The virtual board then shows him several options and choices in a dating simulator. Kiriha then explained that all of this was the work of Amasogi Gouge, whose power was able to make all students in the school feel as if they were in a dating simulator game. Knowing all this was stealth, Kazuya decided to look for the game console controlling the students. While walking down the school corridor, Kazuya accidentally bumped into Chisato and greeted her as usual. Surprisingly, she responded coldly to him, as if they had never been close friends. Meanwhile, at Chisato's side, a young man named Hiroshi was grinning at Kazuya. Hiroshi turns out to be the one who had been rejected by Chisato the previous day and caused the appearance of Amasogi Gouge at the school. Knowing that Hiroshi might be able to harm Chisato because he has been controlled by a demon, Kazuya decides to save Chisato while Kiriha tries to find the whereabouts of the game console. After that, Kazuya also met Osamu and explained the situation while asking for help to get Chisato through a dating simulation. Osamu then explained all the steps in the game and emphasized that Kazuya had to make the best choice to win Chisato's love. At first, Kazuya made Chisato forget Hiroshi a little and spend time with him. However, Kazuya made a fatal mistake when she asked something about Kiriha, so Chisato became furious and left him. Feeling that he has failed, Kazuya returns to Osamu to ask about other ways he can win Chisato's love and end the dating simulation at school. On the other hand, Kiriha told Kazuya and Osamu that she still hadn't found a game console and had almost given up on it. Meanwhile, under the blossoming cherry trees, Chisato, who had completely fallen in love with Hiroshi, was about to receive a confession of love from him. But then, Kazuya suddenly appeared and interrupted them both while taking out two dolls that he and Chisato used to play with when they were children. Seeing the doll, Chisato was reminded of her past with Kazuya and finally freed from the influence of Amasogi Gouge. At the same time, Kiriha and Osamu rushed to find the location of the game console after receiving information from Hiroshi and managed to turn off the dating simulation. A few days later, Kazuya, who was having dinner with his father, Mr. Kagami, and Kasumi, was surprised by Kiriha's presence. Kazuya panicked because Kiriha suddenly appeared in front of his family. However, Kasumi and Mr. Kagami said they knew about Kiriha's presence in this house and were even close friends with her. Even his father reveals that he had known Kiriha since he dated Kazuya's mother in high school. After dinner, Kazuya and Kiriha decided to visit Kyukuri and Kokuyo's residence at the playground. But due to an incident, the playground was forced to be destroyed, so Kyukuri and Kokuyo no longer have a place to live. Kazuya, who felt pity, then offered them to stay at his house. Kasumi welcomed Kyukuri and Kokuyo into their home, but not with Mr. Kagami, so Kiriha and Kasumi had to persuade him to let Kyukuri and Kokuyo stay there. The next day, Kiriha took Kyukuri to visit the temple of the goddess Toguri so that Kyukuri could borrow money to buy their necessities. Arriving there, they were greeted by Toguri, willing to lend Kyukuri money if she managed to beat her in a card game. Despite having lost several times, Kyukuri finally won the game and got a loan of 175,000 yen. Not long after, Kazuya, who had just arrived at his school, was very surprised to see Shiro, who was being loved by girls. Seeing Shiro suddenly becoming so popular, Kiriha thought he might have been possessed by the demon Amasogi. However, Shiro denied it and casually told them that his fame came from a magical perfume that could make girls fall in love with him after he sprayed the perfume on his body. Hearing this, the other students moved to catch Shiro so they could also use the perfume, while Kazuya tried to save him, who was the target of the students. When they were in a safe place, Shiro told Kazuya that he got information about the perfume through an advertisement on a magazine cover and bought it at an online store. But when Shiro bought it and put it on, the perfume had no effect because, in the end, he was still rejected by the girl he liked. However, when Shiro was about to throw away the perfume, suddenly it spoke to him because it had been possessed by the demon Amasogi, who then told him to wear it again so that he could fulfill his wish to be liked by girls. After knowing everything, Kazuya advises Shiro to destroy the perfume because the pleasure he gets from the perfume is only a fake. Shiro also made up his mind and slammed the perfume on the floor. However, instead of breaking, the perfume bounced into the air, and the liquid spilled right on top of Kazuya's head so that he experienced the same thing as Shiro, even worse. In the end, Kazuya defeated the demon Amasogi and removed the perfume's effects. After that, Kazuya, who was about to meet Tadataka in the student council room, looked surprised when he saw Tadataka, who was bald, and only found out that he had been wearing a wig all this time. Kiriha then explained to Kazuya that Tadataka became like that because he had to do penance after being involved in the Malison incident caused by the demon Amasogi. Tadataka then told Kazuya rumors about the appearance of a ghost figure in their school, which was none other than one of the students named Eiko, who died by doing the unthinkable some time ago. Because the appearance of Eiko's ghost scares the students, Tadataka asks Kazuya and Kiriha to solve the problem. Shortly after, Kazuya and Kiriha began to look for information about Eiko with the help of their friends, until finally, Kazuya met a student named Nanako who said that she was also conducting an investigation regarding Eiko's death, which she thought was unnatural. But then, the ghost of Eiko suddenly appeared from the gym not far from them and attacked a student named Kusakabe until she was unconscious. Kazuya rushed to fight Eiko before the female ghost attacked more people. However, in the middle of the fight, she ran away instead. The scene then switches and shows Kazuya and his companions in the school infirmary, waiting for Kusakabe to wake up. When she finally woke up, Kusakabe told about her past with Eiko, where they both had a crush on one of the famous students at their school named Yuichi, who was so popular. The students also created a fan club for Yuichi, where Eiko and Kusakabe also became club members. However, Yuichi seems only interested in Eiko, so she becomes ostracized by the club members, even to the point of being bullied, because Yuichi only cares about her. Furthermore, Kusakabe explained that the chairman of Yuichi's fan club was a student named Miratsuki, who was also the first to see Eiko end her life by throwing herself off the school roof. That night, when she was about to go home, Miratsuki got terror by the ghost of Eiko, who tried to kill her. However, Kazuya had anticipated the attack, so he followed Miratsuki and saved her when Eiko strangled her. Kazuya finally finds out that Nanako is the one controlling Eiko's ghost. However, to his surprise, Nanako is Eiko's younger sister. Nanako then revealed that she did it because she wanted to know why her older sister chose to end her life. Kazuya also finds out that Eiko's ghost came from Eiko's haircut that Nanako kept and that it has been possessed by the demon Amasogi. Nanako then urges Miratsuki to hand over the letter written by Eiko before her death. Miratsuki rushed home to get the letter and immediately gave it to Nanako. The letter explains that Eiko is a quiet person and finds it difficult to express her feelings. But then, the demon Amasogi appeared attached to Eiko's body, allowing her to express her feelings. Since then, Eiko has had a friendly personality and has many friends. The demon then tells Eiko that she will disappear after all of her wishes are fulfilled, and her only unfulfilled wish is to date Yuichi. But after Eiko's wish is fulfilled, the demon instead incites Eiko by saying that there is someone who can interfere with her love affair with Yuichi, and that person is none other than Eiko's younger sister, Nanako. After that, Eiko began to be consumed by the demon's instigation and even had time to think about killing her sister. However, no matter what, Eiko loves her sister very much and decides to end her life to protect Nanako. But then, Eiko's ghost turns vicious due to the influence of the demon Amasogi possessing her. Seeing this, Kiriha advised Kazuya to run away because it would be difficult for them to defeat the demon that had caused someone to end her life. However, Kazuya refuses to run away and will do everything he can to defeat the demon. After a fierce battle, Kazuya defeated the demon, and Eiko's ghost disappeared completely. Kiriha then approached Nanako and said that Eiko had won from the demon because she did not fall into the demon's incitement and chose to protect Nanako. Elsewhere, a Malison cleaner, a girl named Tsunao Sumeragi, is training her physical abilities with the fire god Hanoka. The next day, when Kazuya was about to come home from school, Tsunao suddenly appeared and immediately punched him until he fell to the ground. Seeing this, Kiriha rushed to protect Kazuya and was about to attack Tsunao with her shawl. However, Kiriha's scarf was suddenly cut by Katetsu, Tsukumogami, who resided in Tsunao's sword. Seeing Kazuya, who can be easily taken down by such a light attack, Tsunao didn't even think that Kazuya Kagami's successor was so weak. After that, Tsunao, Kazuya, and their Tsukumogami met Kokuyoura. Tsunao then expressed her desire to test Kazuya's strength as the malison cleaner in the area, which Kokuyoura agreed to. Even though they haven't fought yet, Tsunao openly says that she will replace Kazuya as the malison cleaner in the area because she feels that he is very weak and unable to carry out the tasks assigned by Kokuyoura. The scene then switches and shows Tsunao's past, who was determined to become a malison cleaner after her older brother was killed by a demon. Since then, she has continued to train hard to kill the demon that killed her brother. However, when Tsunao was about to kill the demon, it turned out that the demon was actually killed by Kanaka, who was none other than Kazuya's mother. Tsunao, who feels disapproved, intends to kill Kanaka because she has killed the object of her revenge. Surprisingly, Kanaka wasn't angry and even allowed Tsunao to take revenge on her. Tsunao also fights with Kanaka and tries to defeat her, and indirectly, Kanaka is actually training her to become stronger. The next day, Kazuya trains with Kiriha and prepares a strategy to defeat Tsunao. Kiriha says that Tsunao has an advantage over Kazuya because she has tsukumogami in the form of a sword that can do long-range slashes. On the other hand, Tsunao was also training with Hinoka before her fight against Kazuya. Katetsu then warns her not to underestimate Kazuya because, after all, he is the son of Kazuya Kagami. However, Tsunao doesn't seem to mind it too much and is very confident in her strength. She feels confident that she can defeat Kazuya easily. A week has passed, and the day of the battle between Kazuya and Tsunao has arrived. Before the fight, they left a little of their blood on the ice doll provided by Kokuyoura, where the doll served to distribute the damage and injuries that Kazuya and Tsunao suffered during the fight. The battle's winner will be determined by seeing whose ice doll can survive and not be destroyed until the fight ends. The fight finally started, where Kazuya and Tsunao immediately showed their respective strengths and launched attacks from a distance. However, Tsunao seemed far superior because her tsukumogami was able to rip Kiriha's scarf, making it difficult for Kazuya to counterattack. A fierce battle ensued between them until, finally, Tsunao managed to urge Kazuya, who chose to survive while preparing the new technique he had learned with Kiriha. When Tsunao thought she would win the battle by launching a fatal attack on Kazuya, suddenly, he combined his strength with Kiriha's with the Holy Possession technique, which then made him have the strength that far surpassed Tsunao. However, Tsunao also has her ultimate technique, Wind Slash, that can match Kazuya's attack. Their fight became increasingly fierce until, finally, Kazuya outperformed Tsunao and landed a punch on her stomach, which then shattered her ice doll into pieces. Kazuya managed to win the fight, although, in the end, he collapsed unconscious due to exhaustion. After that, Tsunao returned to her family's house and met her mother, who was very angry at her for having been defeated by Kazuya. Because Tsunao is considered to have tarnished their family's honor, her mother gives her two options to restore her family name, killing Kazuya or marrying him. The series ends with Kazuya being surprised by the appearance of a new student in his class who turns out to be Kiriha, who has returned to her usual form. The moral that can be learned from this anime is that we can learn that if we have a grudge or don't let go of something that has happened, it will only harm ourselves and others. In addition, we are taught to always try and never give up on every condition, as well as to understand our shortcomings and keep trying consistently.